The Equal Rights Amendment, written in 1923, which hoped to grant American women constitutional equality, was passed by Congress in 1972. The National Organization for Women fought for the state ratification of the amendment from 1972 to 1982, while facing opposition from their adversary group, Stop ERA. Although Stop ERA found triumph in the state rejection of the amendment, it is a tragedy for the National Organization for Women and all American women, who still have yet to gain constitutional equality and the benefits of it.
In 1923, Alice Paul wrote the first draft of an amendment. Over time, the writing was revised and eventually became the Equal Rights Amendment.
She said, okay, we've got one right guaranteed equally on the basis of sex. That's the right to vote. Now let's just write one more amendment and say the whole Constitution applies sex neutrally.
The ERA was introduced to Congress every year since its writing until March 22, 1972, when Congress passed the amendment and sent it to the states for ratification. For the amendment to be a part of the Constitution, 3/4 of the United States had to ratify it, or 38 out of the 50 states. The ERA was given a deadline of 7 years. The writing of the amendment states, Section 1, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Section 3, the amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification.
The National Organization for Women, or NOW, was founded on July 30th, 1966. Betty Friedan and several other activists decided to create a group that would take action against sex discrimination. As Betty Friedan put it in her 1966 Statement of Purpose for the organization, NOW is dedicated to the proposition that women, first and foremost, are human beings, who, like all other people in our society, must have the chance to develop their fullest human potential. The organization formally launched in October of 1966, where a board of officers were elected, including Betty Friedan as the president. The National Organization for Women continued to grow, fighting for political issues and becoming an icon of the feminist movement.
Stop ERA was the opposing force of the Equal Rights Amendment movement. Stop ERA was founded by Phyllis Schlafly on March 22, 1972, the day Congress passed the ERA. STOP was an acronym for Stop Taking Our Privileges. Schlafly wanted to prevent the ratification of the ERA because she believed the ERA was taking away the rights of women rather than improving them.
NOW was a prominent symbol for the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. They and ERA supporters fought for the belief that there should be an amendment to bring constitutional equality for women.
I think that it is high time they be applied equally to women. And with all the hypocrisy, that is all the Equal Rights Amendment, and that is what it says, that the Bill of Rights to the Constitution and the Constitution of the United States shall be applied equally to women. That means that there will be a constitutional underpinning on the laws against sex discrimination that now exists, and there will be the constitutional underpinning to remove the remaining areas of inequity.
NOW believed that this constitutional equality would mean an end to pay inequality, pregnancy discrimination, violence against women, and many other discriminatory laws and societal norms.
Phyllis Schlafly expressed that if the ERA became an amendment, women would be drafted into the war, taxpayers would be responsible for abortions, unisex bathrooms would be put in place, homosexual marriages would be legal, and husbands would not be able to provide for their wives and kids. She argued that the ratification of the ERA and therefore total constitutional equality would mean that every aspect of people's lives would have to be equal, which she and ERA opposers believed hurt American women more than it would help them.
Who actually are fighting for the ERA in order to send and force women into combat. They are fighting for the ERA so that the woman whose husband has died and has 3 children and is working at a job standing next to a man who has 3 children also and is the supporter, and she is also that because her husband is dead. She should be paid the same money for the same job. That's what it's all about.
The National Organization for Women's work on the Equal Rights Amendment began before the amendment passed through Congress. Due to the efforts of NOW leaders, the amendment was able to pass through the House Judiciary Committee and move on to be heard by the full Congress. After the ratification was moved onto the states, NOW worked tirelessly to convince American voters that the ERA was worth it. The organization campaigned for pro-ERA candidates to be elected in states, organized boycotts for the ERA, coordinated marches, and debated opposers of the amendment.
People were writing letters, making phone calls. They were out in the streets demonstrating, all of which we still do, and basically organizing. There was a huge effort in the 70s to organize different groups of people. So let's say teachers for the ERA or trade unions for the ERA.
As the ratification deadline of March 22, 1979 grew closer, now realized for the ERA to succeed they would need an extension. On July 9, 1978, Now organized the second largest feminist march in U.S. history. Located in Washington, D.C., over 100,000 ERA supporters showed up to try and get the deadline extended. By October 6, 1978, a new deadline of June 30, 1982 had been decided. After the victory, Now continued to fight for ratification. From lawsuits to a nationwide advertising campaign, Now was there supporting the ERA.
Over the course of their campaign, Phyllis Schlafly and Stop ERA had successfully convinced many Americans to oppose the ERA through organizing letter campaigns, rallies, and starting a telephone tree. Phyllis Schlafly released a monthly report in which she covered all conservative topics, but mostly the fight against the ERA.
Hello, I'm Phyllis Schlafly. Thank you for letting me visit with you via the medium of television.
In addition, Schlafly went on TV networks to debate feminists and share her point of view on the ERA. Some of the networks included The Today Show, Ira Press, Larry King, and many more. After the ERA deadline was renewed, Schlafly started to persuade many states to rescind their votes. The extensive campaign Stop ERA created achieved their goal of convincing people of the tragic life the ERA would have made for American women.
By the deadline of June 30, 1982, only 35 out of the required 38 states had ratified the ERA. This failing of the amendment was a great triumph for Phyllis Schlafly and Stop ERA because of the campaigning and work that she and her colleagues had put into ending the amendment. This event was a tragedy for the National Organization for Women and for all American women. Because of the end of this amendment, women still do not have constitutional equality and the benefits the constitutional change would bring.
Women in today's America would receive many advantages from the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Having an explicit constitutional agreement granting equal rights would help lawyers in pursuing claims for violence against women, workplace discrimination, unequal pay, and pregnancy discrimination. Although the ERA failed ratification in 1982, supporters of the amendment haven't given up. The recent passing of the 27th Amendment, which is 200 years past its deadline, gives them hope that the ERA could still be ratified by the states. However, the logistics of whether or not the ERA could still become an amendment is unclear.
It did expire, and it's unclear whether the 5 states who rescinded much later on their ratification, whether that was even legal. So we don't know whether one would need one more state.
Today, states are still ratifying the ERA. Most recently, Nevada and Illinois ratified the amendment. Although support of the ERA has grown, there is still opposition, mainly from the newly found Stop ERA Again, which is run by the members of the Eagle Forum, a group created by Phyllis Schlafly in the 70s. There are still forces working towards ratification and constitutional equality. Groups such as the National Organization for Women, the ERA Coalition, and the Alice Paul Institute educate people on the Equal Rights Amendment through social media, websites, and other methods. This new wave of support for the ERA also comes from the Me Too movement, which began in 2016 and encourages women to speak out against rape, sexual assault, and other violence or discrimination. After hearing some of the devastating harassment and rape stories, more and more people have begun to see how important the Equal Rights Amendment is to women's rights and equality. Although the ERA supposedly died in 1982, it is still very much alive and worth fighting for.
As long as there are men in power in this country that keep women down, we have to have an explicit guarantee of equality in the Constitution.
The Equal Rights Amendment is an important part of women's history that few people are educated on, but has been gathering more interest in the past few years. The amendment would grant American women constitutional equality, which would be beneficial in court cases, work environments, and women's everyday lives. The ERA would assist these court cases through giving lawyers a specific part of the Constitution to use for claims of violence against women, pay inequality, pregnancy discrimination, and overall unequal laws. The triumph that is the ERA consists of the attention it brought to women's issues, the cause it was fighting for, and to some how far the movement has come, while others view the ending of the amendment as a triumph. Phyllis Schlafly and Stop ERA viewed the failure as a triumph because of the painstakingly long and difficult campaign she led to reject the ERA. This was a tragedy for the National Organization for Women, who had also created a large, remarkable campaign. The real tragedy, however, was the impact the failing of the amendment had on American women. Women still do not have the constitutional rights the ERA would secure, meaning it is still hard for women to get justice for violence against them and for workplace discrimination. The failing of the Equal Rights Amendment was triumphant for some, while it was tragic for others, but the greatest tragedy is the lack of representation women have in the Constitution, and the lack of justice because of that. This discrimination could have been and still could be fixed by the ERA.